My name is Joanne, and I am 56 years old. For 26 years, I raised my daughter Sophie alone after my husband passed away. I watched her grow into a beautiful woman, and when she told me she was getting married, I thought it would be the happiest day of our lives. I never imagined that her wedding would become the day I was publicly humiliated in front of 200 people. But I also never imagined what would happen when someone in that room recognized exactly who I was. Before we dive into this story, I would love to know where you are watching from. Drop your location in the comments below. And if you have ever been judged unfairly based on your appearance, hit that like button right now. Make sure to subscribe, because what happened next at that wedding will shock you. Now let me take you back to the beginning and show you how one insult changed everything. Let me tell you about my life before that terrible wedding day. I was born in a small town in Ohio, the youngest of 4 children. My father worked in the coal mines, coming home every evening covered in black dust, his hands rough and calloused. My mother worked as a kitchen assistant at the local diner, serving breakfast to truckers and factory workers from 5 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon. We did not have much, but my parents taught me something valuable. They taught me that hard work and intelligence could take you anywhere. I was always good with numbers. In high school, while other kids struggled with math, I found it easy, almost natural. My teachers noticed and encouraged me to apply for college scholarships. I worked 2 jobs during my senior year, saving every penny I could. When the acceptance letter came from the state university with a full scholarship, my mother cried. I was going to be the first person in our family to go to college. At university, I majored in business administration. I loved learning about economics, real estate markets, investment strategies. I could see patterns that others missed, opportunities where others saw only risk. That is where I met Paul. He was studying engineering, tall and kind, with gentle brown eyes. We started dating in our sophomore year. He understood my drive, my ambition. He never tried to make me smaller or quieter. When we graduated, we got married. I was 23 years old, and I believed I had found my perfect partner. Paul got a job as an engineer at a manufacturing company. I started working for a small real estate firm, learning the business from the ground up. 2 years later, Sophie was born. She was perfect with Paul's brown eyes and my determination. I cut back my hours to be home with her, but I never stopped working. I would put Sophie down for her nap and spend those quiet hours studying property listings, learning about neighborhoods, understanding what made a property valuable. Life was good. We had a modest house in the suburbs, a reliable car, enough money to be comfortable. Sophie started school. Paul coached her soccer team on weekends. I worked my way up at the real estate firm, becoming one of their top agents. We took family vacations to Lake Michigan every summer, building sandcastles and collecting smooth stones from the shore. Then when Sophie was 10 years old, everything changed. Paul was driving home from work on a rainy November evening. A truck ran a red light. The police officer who came to our door that night had tears in his eyes when he told me. Paul died instantly. They said he did not suffer. That was supposed to be a comfort, but it was not. The months after Paul's death were the darkest of my life. I had to be strong for Sophie, but every night after I tucked her into bed, I would sit in our empty bedroom and cry until I had no tears left. The life insurance was not much. The mortgage still needed to be paid. Sophie needed clothes, food, school supplies. I realized that I could not just work for someone else anymore. I needed to build something that would secure our future. I took a risk. I used the life insurance money and our savings to buy my first property. It was a rundown house in a neighborhood that was just starting to improve. I spent weekends fixing it up, painting walls, replacing fixtures, learning carpentry from YouTube videos. Sophie would hand me tools and we would work together. 6 months later, I sold that house for a 30% profit. I took that money and bought 2 more properties, then 4, then 8. I learned to spot potential where others saw only decay. I understood market trends, knew when to buy and when to sell. Within 5 years, I had a small portfolio of rental properties generating steady income. Within 10 years, I had my own company, Miller Properties Group. Within 15 years, I owned over 200 properties across 5 states, and my company was valued at more than $80 million. But here is the thing. I never changed how I lived. I kept our modest house in the suburbs because it was filled with memories of Paul. I drove the same reliable car because it ran perfectly fine. I wore simple clothes from department stores because expensive labels never mattered to me. I put my money into investments, into Sophie's education fund, into building security for our future. I did not need a mansion or a sports car to prove my worth. Sophie grew up not knowing the full extent of my success. She knew I worked in real estate. She knew we were comfortable. But I never told her about the millions in assets, about the company's valuation, about the investment offers I turned down regularly. I wanted her to value hard work and character, not money. I wanted her to choose her own path without the pressure or entitlement that wealth can bring. Sophie went to college and studied marketing. She was smart, kind, hardworking. She got a job at a mid-sized company and made her own way. I was so proud of her. 2 years ago, she met Brandon at a corporate networking event. He was 29, worked for his family's manufacturing company, and seemed polite enough when she first introduced us. I remember that first meeting clearly. Sophie brought him to our house for dinner. Brandon arrived in an expensive car, wearing a designer suit. He shook my hand and called me Mrs. Miller. He was polite, but there was something in his eyes when he looked around our modest home. A flicker of something I could not quite name. Disappointment, maybe, or superiority. Over the next several months, I saw more of that attitude. Brandon would make small comments about our neighborhood. He would suggest restaurants that were too expensive, then act surprised when I said I preferred simpler places. He talked constantly about his family's business, his family's house, his family's connections. He never asked about my work beyond a polite, "How is real estate going?" Sophie was happy, though. She loved him. She glowed when she talked about him. And I had learned long ago that you cannot choose who your children fall in love with. All you can do is support them and hope they find happiness. After a year of dating, Brandon proposed. Sophie called me crying with joy. They were getting married. I hugged my daughter and told her I was happy for her, and I meant it. I wanted her to be happy. But that small doubt in my heart, that tiny voice of concern, I pushed it down. I told myself I was being overprotective. I told myself that Brandon would be good to my daughter. That was my first mistake. After the engagement, it was time to meet Brandon's family properly. Sophie was nervous, which made me nervous. She kept saying they were very traditional, very formal. She asked me to dress nicely. I wore my best navy dress and the pearl necklace Paul had given me for our 5th anniversary. I thought I looked presentable. Brandon's family lived in an enormous house in the wealthy part of town. Not just a house, really, a mansion. The driveway was circular, lined with perfectly manicured hedges. A fountain stood in the center water, cascading down marble tiers. When I pulled up in my 12-year-old sedan, I felt suddenly out of place. The valet parking attendant looked at my car with barely concealed surprise. Inside the house was even more intimidating. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, artwork on the walls that looked expensive enough to be in museums. A maid answered the door and led us to a sitting room that was larger than my entire first floor. Brandon's parents were waiting. His father, Harold, was a large man with silver hair and an air of authority. He wore a golf shirt and expensive slacks, and his handshake was firm to the point of crushing. His mother Patricia was thin and elegant, her hair perfectly styled, her jewelry understated but clearly expensive. She offered me 2 fingers to shake her smile, not quite reaching her eyes. Brandon also has a younger sister, Kristin. She was 25, pretty in a polished way, wearing a designer dress and shoes I recognized from a magazine Sophie had been looking at. Shoes that cost more than my monthly grocery bill. We sat down for tea. Actual tea service, with a silver pot and delicate china cups. Patricia poured her movements, practiced and precise. Harold asked me about my work. "What do you do?" "Joanne," he said, his tone suggesting he was simply being polite. "I work in real estate," I replied simply. "Oh," Patricia said, her voice bright and false. "A real estate agent. How nice." I did not correct her assumption. Let them think what they wanted. "And where do you live?" Kristin asked, sipping her tea. "In Riverside," I said. "It is a nice neighborhood." Kristin exchanged a glance with her mother. Riverside? How quaint. The conversation continued in that vein. They asked surface questions, but clearly were not interested in the answers. They talked about their recent vacation to the French Riviera, about Harold's golf club, about Patricia's charity board positions. They mentioned names of people they assumed I should know, then looked surprised when I did not recognize them. Brandon sat beside Sophie, holding her hand, saying little. He seemed comfortable in this environment, completely at ease with his family's obvious wealth and their subtle put-downs. When we finally left 3 hours later, I felt exhausted. Sophie asked if I had enjoyed the visit. I lied and said yes. But I saw how she looked at Brandon's house, at his family's lifestyle. She was impressed. She was dazzled. And that worried me more than anything. Over the next several months, as the wedding plans took shape, my concerns grew. Patricia took over the planning almost immediately. She barely consulted Sophie, and she never consulted me. She booked a venue at an exclusive hotel in Manhattan. She hired a famous wedding planner. She chose the flowers, the menu, the band. When I offered to contribute to the costs, Patricia waved her hand dismissively. "We can handle it," she said. "We would not want you to strain your budget." The words were polite, but the meaning was clear. They thought I could not afford it. They thought I was poor. And they wanted me to know my place. I thought about telling them the truth. I thought about mentioning my company, my assets, my net worth. But something stopped me. Pride, maybe, or curiosity. I wanted to see how far their snobbery would go. I wanted to see if Brandon would defend me, if Sophie would stand up for her mother. So I stayed silent and watched. The invitations went out. My name was listed simply as Mrs. Paul Miller. Their side of the invitation took up 3 lines listing titles and credentials. When I received my copy in the mail, I noticed the seating chart. My table was number 20, at the very back of the reception hall. Not at the family table, not even near it. At a table with people I had never met, people who were clearly B-list guests. I called Sophie. "Honey, there might be a mistake with the seating chart." She was quiet for a moment. "Mom Brandon's family did the arrangements. They said because we do not have many relatives on your side, it made sense to put you with some of their distant cousins. I am your mother, Sophie. I should be at the family table. I know Mom. I asked about it. But Patricia said the family table was already full, and Brandon agreed with her. Please do not make this difficult. It is just one day. Just one day." That phrase should have been my warning. There were other signs too. Small things that added up. At the rehearsal dinner, Brandon introduced Sophie to his extended family. He talked about her job, her education, her accomplishments. Then he said, "And this is her mother," Joanne gesturing vaguely in my direction. No other introduction. No mention of how I raised Sophie alone. No acknowledgement of anything about me. I caught Brandon talking to his friends one evening when I arrived early to drop off Sophie's dress. He did not know I was there. I heard him say, "Yeah, my fiancé's mum is, well, let's just say she's not from our world." His friends laughed. I stood in the hallway frozen, those words cutting deep. But I said nothing. I did not want to upset Sophie. I did not want to be the difficult mother who caused drama before the wedding. So I swallowed my hurt and my anger, and I told myself it would be fine. The wedding would happen, Sophie would be happy, and I could step back into my quiet life. That was my second mistake. The wedding day arrived on a beautiful Saturday in May. I woke up at 5 in the morning, too nervous to sleep. I had chosen a simple dress in a soft blue shade, modest and appropriate. No flashy jewelry, except for Paul's necklace. I did my own hair and makeup, keeping everything natural. I drove into Manhattan, taking my time. The hotel where the wedding was being held was one of the most prestigious in the city. 50 stories of glass and steel overlooking Central Park. Doormen in uniforms greeted guests. Inside the lobby was all marble and gold, enormous flower arrangements perfuming the air. I gave my car keys to the valet, who looked at my sedan with thinly veiled disdain. He handed me a ticket without meeting my eyes. I walked through the revolving doors, my purse clutched tightly. The wedding was on the 10th floor, in a ballroom that could hold 300 people. I took the elevator up, my stomach churning. When the doors opened, I stepped into chaos. Guests were arriving, all dressed in designer clothes dripping with jewelry. Women in gowns that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Men in custom-tailored suits. Everyone looked like they had stepped out of a fashion magazine. I felt immediately out of place. My simple dress, which had seemed appropriate at home, now felt dowdy and cheap. I smoothed it down nervously and walked into the reception area where pre-ceremony drinks were being served. Patricia spotted me almost immediately. She glided over, her smile fixed and cold. "Joanne, you made it. How lovely." Her eyes traveled down my dress, lingering on the modest hemline, the department store fabric. Then she turned to a couple standing nearby. "This is Sophie's mother," she said. "She works in real estate." The way she said it made it sound like I sold used cars. The couple nodded politely, barely looking at me before turning back to their conversation. I stood there awkwardly, holding a glass of champagne I had not asked for, feeling invisible. Kristin walked by with a group of young women, all laughing and chatting. She saw me and whispered something to her friends. They all turned to look, barely suppressing their giggles. I heard one of them say, "That is the bride's mum. Can you believe it?" More laughter. I escaped to the restroom, needing a moment alone. I stood in front of the gilded mirror, looking at myself. My hair, which I had thought looked nice, seemed frizzy compared to the sleek styles of the other women. My makeup, natural and light, looked washed out. The lines around my eyes, the grey streaking through my brown hair, all of it suddenly seemed glaring. I was 56 years old, and I looked it. No expensive procedures, no designer clothes to hide behind, just me. I thought about Paul. What would he say if he could see me now? He would tell me to hold my head high. He would remind me that I built an empire from nothing. He would say that these people did not matter. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and walked back out. The ceremony was about to begin. I found my seat in the 3rd row, the designated spot for the mother of the bride. Across the aisle, Brandon's family filled multiple rows. Parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins. All dressed impeccably, all looking like they belonged in this gilded setting. I sat alone. My parents had passed away years ago. I had no siblings, no extended family to speak of. It was just me in a sea of strangers, waiting to watch my daughter get married. The music started. The bridesmaids walked down the aisle in their lavender dresses. Then the flower girl, Brandon's niece, adorable and confident. And then Sophie appeared at the back of the aisle, and my breath caught. She was stunning. Her dress was perfect, her smile radiant. For a moment, all my worry and hurt faded away. This was my daughter, my beautiful girl, and she was happy. Sophie walked down the aisle alone. I had offered to walk with her since Paul was gone, but Brandon's family had suggested she walk alone to be modern and independent. Another small exclusion. But seeing her now, she looked strong and sure. The ceremony was beautiful. The officiant spoke about love and commitment. Brandon and Sophie exchanged vows. He promised to love her honor, her cherish her. She promised the same. They exchanged rings. They kissed. Everyone applauded. But during the entire ceremony, when the officiant asked who gives this bride, there was silence. No one stood. No one acknowledged me. It was as if Sophie had appeared fully formed, with no mother who raised her, no family behind her. I sat there invisible, my hands clenched in my lap. After the ceremony, guests moved to the reception hall. I found my table. Number 20. It was near the kitchen doors, far from the head table, where Sophie and Brandon sat. Far from the family tables, where Harold, Patricia, and Kristin held court. I was seated with people I had never met. A distant cousin of Harold's, some business associates. They introduced themselves politely, but showed no interest in conversation. I watched from my distant table as the reception unfolded. The first dance, the cake cutting, the toasts. Brandon's father gave a speech about family legacy and tradition. Brandon's best man made jokes and told stories. Patricia dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, playing the emotional mother perfectly. No one asked me to speak. No one acknowledged my presence. I sat there pushing food around my plate, feeling more alone than I had felt since Paul died. After dinner, as dessert was being served, Brandon stood up at the head table. He tapped his knife against his champagne glass, and the room gradually fell silent. All 200 guests turned their attention to him. "Thank you all so much for being here today." Brandon began, his voice carrying across the room. "This has been the most incredible day of my life, and it would not have been possible without so many amazing people." He started thanking people. His parents for their love and support. His sister for being there for him. His best man for the speech. The wedding planner for making everything perfect. He thanked his business partners, his friends, even the band. Then he said, "And of course I have to talk about my new family, Sophie's family." The room stirred with polite interest. I sat up straighter, my heart beating faster. Maybe finally I would be acknowledged. Brandon continued, "Sophie's mom is here somewhere." He looked around, shading his eyes theatrically as if searching. "Where are you, Joanne?" I stood up slowly, my legs shaky. Every eye in the room turned toward me at my distant table. I raised my hand slightly, unsure what else to do. "There she is," Brandon said, and something in his tone made my skin prickle. "Everyone, I want to introduce you properly to Sophie's mother." He paused, and in that pause I felt something shift. The air in the room changed. Brandon's smile widened, but it was not warm. It was cruel. "This is Joanne," he said loudly, or as we like to call her in the family, the ugly rat we have to live with now. The words hit me like a physical blow. For a moment there was absolute silence. Then someone laughed. One of Brandon's groomsmen, then another person, then more. Within seconds, dozens of people were laughing. Patricia had her hand over her mouth, her eyes sparkling with mean amusement. Harold was chuckling, shaking his head. Kristin was laughing so hard she had tears streaming down her face. "Brandon, what are you saying?" Sophie's voice cut through the laughter, high and shocked. "Oh, come on, honey," Brandon said, waving his hand dismissively. "Look at her. She's been sitting there all night looking so uncomfortable, so out of place." His voice took on a mocking tone. "Look at that dress. Did you get it at a thrift store, Joanne? And that car you drove here? Is it even safe? Does it pass inspection?" More laughter rippled through the crowd. I stood frozen, my face burning, my hands trembling. I could not move. I could not speak. The humiliation was total and complete. Brandon continued, clearly enjoying himself now. I mean, really. Sophie is marrying into our family, and what does she bring? A mother who works as a low-level real estate agent and drives a car that should be in a junkyard. He laughed, and others laughed with him. It is like something out of a comedy movie. The rich guy and the poor girl. Brandon, stop it right now. Sophie was on her feet, her face pale. That is my mother. Brandon shrugged. Relax. She knows I'm kidding. Right, Joanne. His eyes met mine across the room, cold and challenging. You know it is all in good fun. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Tears burned in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not here, not in front of these people. Then from somewhere near the back of the room, a voice rang out. Sharp, commanding, furious. Wait just a minute. Everyone turned. A man was standing up, pushing his chair back. He was around 60 years old, distinguished-looking with silver hair and an expensive suit. He looked familiar, though I could not place him immediately. Joanne, the man said, staring at me with wide eyes. Joanne Miller. The laughter died away. Brandon looked confused. Uncle William, you know her. William. The name clicked into place. William Harrison. He was Harold's younger brother, a successful investment banker in New York. I had met him once years ago at a real estate investment conference. He had tried to buy my company. It is you, William said, walking toward me through the tables. I cannot believe it. You are the bride's mother. The room was completely silent now. Every person was watching this exchange, confused and curious. Brandon was frowning. Uncle William, what are you talking about? William ignored him. He reached my table and looked at me with something like awe. Joanne Miller, CEO of Miller Properties Group. I have not seen you since that conference in Boston 5 years ago. My mouth was dry. I nodded slightly. Hello, William. Brandon's voice cut through sharp with disbelief. What? That is not possible. William turned to face his nephew, and his expression was thunderous. Did you just call this woman a rat? It was a joke, Brandon stammered. I did not. You absolutely did. William said, his voice rising. I heard you. Everyone heard you. His eyes swept the room, and people had the grace to look away. Do you have any idea who you just insulted? William's face was red with anger. He turned to address the entire room, his voice carrying with authority. Let me educate all of you about the woman you just laughed at. He pointed at me. This is Joanne Miller. She is not some low-level real estate agent. She is the founder and CEO of Miller Properties Group, one of the most successful real estate investment companies on the East Coast. Whispers erupted throughout the room. I remained standing, my heart pounding, watching the shock ripple across faces. William continued, his voice hard. Miller Properties Group owns over 200 residential and commercial properties across 5 states. The company's estimated value is over $80 million. Joanne built that empire from nothing, starting with a single house. She renovated herself after her husband died. Harold stood up, his face pale. William, that cannot be right. It absolutely is, William snapped. 5 years ago, my investment firm tried to acquire her company. We offered her a partnership worth millions. She turned us down flat, said she did not need partners, that she was doing just fine on her own. He looked at me with clear respect, and she was right. Her company has doubled in value since then. Patricia had her hand over her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. But she dresses so plainly, she whispered. She drives such an old car. William turned his glare on her. That is called humility, Patricia. That is called not needing to flaunt your wealth to feel important. Joanne Miller lives modestly because she is secure in who she is. Unlike some people, she does not need designer labels and expensive cars to prove her worth. Brandon was shaking his head, looking between me and William. This has to be a mistake. She told us she works in real estate. She lives in a small house. She did not correct you, William said coldly. And why should she? You people made it clear from the beginning that you looked down on her. She had no obligation to prove herself to you. Kristin spoke up, her voice shaky. But why would someone so wealthy live like that? Because she is a good mother, William said simply. He looked at me. Am I right, Joanne? You wanted your daughter to grow up understanding the value of work, not the privilege of wealth. I found my voice, though it trembled. Yes, I raised Sophie to know that character matters more than money, that hard work matters more than inheritance. I looked at Brandon, at Harold, at Patricia. I did not tell Sophie the full extent of my success because I wanted her to make her own way, to choose her own path. I wanted her to choose a partner based on love, not wealth. Sophie was crying now, staring at me with a mixture of shock and horror and understanding. Mom, she whispered. Why did you never tell me? I looked at my daughter, my voice steady now. Because I wanted you to be proud of your own accomplishments, not mine. Because I wanted you to know your own worth. I paused, and because I wanted to see what kind of people you were marrying into. The room was absolutely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. I turned to look at Brandon, at his parents, at Kristin. For months I watched you people look down on me. You assumed I was poor. You assumed I was beneath you. You seated me at the back of the room like I did not matter. You mocked my clothes, my car, my life. And tonight, in front of 200 people, you called me a rat. Brandon tried to speak. Joanne, I did not mean. Yes, you did. I cut him off. You meant every word. You would not have said it if you did not believe it. And your family laughed along with you because they believed it too. I looked around the room at all the guests who had been laughing minutes before. They were all silent now, many looking ashamed. Let me tell you something about wealth, I continued. Real wealth is not about what you own. It is about who you are when no one is watching. It is about how you treat people when you think they have nothing to offer you. I gestured at Brandon and his family. You people failed that test. Patricia stood up, her face white. Joanne, I apologize. We did not know. No, I said firmly. You did not know about my money, but you knew I was Sophie's mother. You knew I raised her alone after my husband died. You knew I worked hard to provide for her. And none of that mattered to you because you thought I was poor. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. Harold spoke up, his voice pleading. This is a misunderstanding. We would never have what I interrupted, never have treated me like dirt if you knew I had money. That does not make it better. That makes it worse. It means you only respect wealth, not people. I turned to William. Thank you for speaking up. Not everyone here would have done that. William nodded. I have followed your career for years, Joanne. You are one of the most brilliant investors I know. These people should be honored to have you in their family. Instead, they humiliated you. It is disgraceful. I looked one more time at Sophie. She was sobbing Brandon awkwardly, trying to comfort her, but she pushed him away. I love you, sweetheart, I said to my daughter. More than anything in this world. And I want you to be happy. But I will not stay where I am not respected. I will not pretend this did not happen. With that, I picked up my purse from the table. I walked across that ballroom, my head held high, feeling the eyes of 200 people on me. Some were shocked. Some looked ashamed. A few looked at me with new respect. I walked out those double doors, down the elegant hallway, into the elevator. I rode down to the lobby, handed my valet ticket to the attendant, and waited for my 12-year-old sedan. When it pulled up, I tipped the valet $5, got in, and drove away from that hotel, away from that disaster of a wedding, away from those terrible people. As I drove through the Manhattan streets, my hands finally started shaking. The adrenaline that had kept me standing, kept me strong, began to fade. Tears finally came streaming down my face. Not tears of shame, but tears of anger and relief. I had stood up for myself. I had not let them break me. And that felt like victory. I drove home in a blur of tears and streetlights. By the time I pulled into my driveway, it was past midnight. I sat in my car for a long moment, staring at my small house. The house where I had raised Sophie. The house filled with memories of Paul. It had never seemed small to me before, but after tonight, after seeing Brandon's family's mansion and that opulent hotel, I saw it through their eyes. Modest, plain, ordinary. But it was mine. Every mortgage payment made with money I earned. Every repair done with my own hands. This house represented survival and strength and love. I got out of the car and went inside. The silence was deafening. I turned on lights, put my purse down, and just stood there in my living room. My phone started buzzing. Text messages, calls, voicemails piling up. I pulled it out and saw Sophie's name over and over. I could not deal with it yet. I turned the phone off and sat down on the couch. What had I done? I had walked out of my daughter's wedding. I had publicly confronted her new husband and his family. I had revealed secrets I had kept for years. The question was, had I done the right thing? I thought about Brandon's face when William revealed who I was. The shock, the disbelief, the embarrassment. I thought about Patricia's stammered apologies, so clearly motivated only by the discovery of my wealth. I thought about the laughter that had filled that room when Brandon called me a rat. Yes, I had done the right thing. I slept poorly that night, waking every few hours, my mind replaying the evening. The next morning, I finally turned on my phone. 43 messages, 27 missed calls. I started reading. Sophie had sent 17 messages. The first few were frantic. "Mom, please answer. Mom, where are you?" Then they became apologetic. "Mom, I am so sorry. I did not know they felt that way. I did not know you were so successful. Why did you never tell me?" Then angry. "Mom, you walked out of my wedding. How could you do that?" Then sad. "Mom, please. I need you." I read them all, but did not respond yet. I needed to think. There were messages from William. He had sent one the night before. "Joanne. I apologize for my family's behavior. What happened tonight was unconscionable. If you need anything, please reach out." He left his personal number. There was even a message from Patricia. "Joanne, we need to talk. Please call me." The tone was urgent, almost panicked. I ignored them all. Instead, I made coffee, sat in my kitchen, and stared out at my small backyard. The grass needed mowing. The fence needed a fresh coat of paint. Normal things. Real things. Around noon, there was a knock at my door. I looked through the peephole and saw Sophie. Her eyes were red and swollen. She was still wearing her wedding dress. Behind her was a car engine running. I could not see who was driving. I opened the door. Sophie looked at me and fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "Mom," she whispered. "Come in," I said quietly. She stepped inside the enormous dress, barely fitting through the doorway. She stood in my small living room, looking lost and hurt and confused. We stood there for a long moment, just looking at each other. Then Sophie spoke, her voice breaking. "Why did you never tell me? Why did you let me think we were just getting by?" I gestured for her to sit down, which she did awkwardly in all that fabric. I sat across from her. "Because I wanted you to be your own person," I said. "I wanted you to succeed on your own merit. I wanted you to know what it felt like to work hard to earn things, to be proud of your own accomplishments. If you had grown up knowing we were wealthy, everything would have been different." Sophie wiped her eyes. "But I had a right to know. We could have had a better house, better things." "Better things do not make a better life," I said gently. Look at Brandon's family. They have all the money in the world, and they are miserable people. They judge everyone by their bank account. Is that how you want to live? Sophie was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, After you left, everything fell apart. People started leaving. Some of Brandon's relatives came up to me and said they were sorry that they did not know that they felt terrible. But others, her voice hardened, others defended him, said it was just a joke, said you were being too sensitive. What did Brandon say? I asked. Sophie's face crumpled. He tried to laugh it off at first, said everyone was overreacting. But I was furious. I screamed at him in front of everyone. I asked him how he could do that to my mother. He just kept saying he did not know that if he had known you were wealthy, he never would have said those things. She looked at me, her eyes full of pain. He did not even understand why that made it worse. I reached out and took her hand. Oh, sweetheart, we had a huge fight, Sophie continued, right there at the wedding, in front of everyone. His parents tried to calm us down, but I would not stop. I told Brandon that if he could not respect my mother, he could not respect me. She paused. We did not go on our honeymoon. He went back to his parents' house. I got a hotel room. That is where I spent my wedding night. Alone in a hotel crying. My heart broke for her. I am so sorry, Sophie. I never wanted this. Are you sorry? She asked, looking at me directly. Are you sorry you exposed them? Because I am not. Her voice was fierce now. I needed to see who they really were. Who he really is. She looked down at her hands. I just wish I had seen it sooner. We sat together for hours. I told Sophie everything. About building the business, about the properties, about the investments, about the net worth I had accumulated. She listened, sometimes crying, sometimes laughing at stories I told about my early days, buying rundown houses and fixing them up myself. You should have told me, she said finally. I would have been so proud of you. I am proud of you. I know you are honey. But I am also proud of the woman you became without that knowledge. You are kind, hard-working, humble. Those are things money cannot buy. Sophie left late that afternoon. She hugged me tightly and promised to stay in touch. She needed to figure out her marriage, she said. She needed to decide if Brandon was capable of change or if the values his family raised him with were too deeply ingrained. Over the next week, my life became chaos. The story of what happened at the wedding spread through social circles, then hit local news, then somehow made it to national entertainment websites. A wealthy businesswoman humiliated at her daughter's wedding, then revealed to be worth millions. It was the kind of story people loved. My phone rang constantly. Reporters wanting interviews. Old business acquaintances calling to congratulate me or offer support. Strangers sending messages of encouragement on social media I barely used. And then one afternoon, Harold and Brandon showed up at my office. I had not been to the office during all this chaos, but my assistant called to warn me they were there. I decided to see them. My office was in a high-rise building in downtown Manhattan, 20th floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Miller Properties Group took up the entire floor. When Harold and Brandon walked in, I saw their faces register shock at the elegant reception area, the busy staff members, the clear signs of a successful operation. My assistant showed them to my office. It was large and professionally decorated with my degrees and awards on the walls. Photos of properties I had developed. A shelf full of industry recognition plaques. I sat behind my mahogany desk and gestured for them to sit in the chairs across from me. They both looked uncomfortable. Harold especially seemed diminished, somehow less commanding than he had been at his mansion. Joanne Harold began. We came to apologize. What happened at the wedding was completely inappropriate. We had no idea about your success, about your company. I leaned back in my chair and looked at them both. You keep saying that. You had no idea about my success. But that should not matter. You should have treated me with respect, regardless of my net worth. You are absolutely right, Harold said quickly. We made terrible assumptions. We judged you unfairly. I looked at Brandon. He had not said anything yet. What about you, Brandon? What do you have to say? He cleared his throat. I am sorry for what I said. It was cruel. It was wrong. I should never have called you. He hesitated what I called you, if I had known. Stop right there, I interrupted. That is the problem. You keep adding, if I had known. You are not sorry you insulted me. You are sorry you insulted someone who turned out to be wealthy. Brandon flushed. That is not fair. Is it not? I asked coldly. Tell me, Brandon. If I truly had been a struggling real estate agent, if I truly had driven that old car because it was all I could afford, would you be sitting here apologizing? Or would you still think it was a funny joke? He did not answer. He could not. I thought so, I said. I leaned forward. Let me tell you why I drove that car and lived in that house. Not because I had to, but because I chose to. Because I learned long ago that things do not make you happy. That wealth is a tool, not an identity. That character matters more than possessions. I paused. Those are lessons you have never learned, and I do not think you are capable of learning them. Joanne. Please, Harold said. Brandon made a mistake. He is young. He can learn. He is 29 years old, I said. That is old enough to know better. And he learned his values from you and Patricia. This is not just about him. This is about your entire family's attitude toward people you perceive as less than you. Harold's face hardened. We came here in good faith to apologize. No, I corrected him. You came here because you want something. Your company is looking for investors for your new manufacturing plant expansion, William told me. Harold looked startled. How did you? I have my sources, I said simply, and I also know you have been approaching investors for months with no success. The manufacturing industry is contracting. Banks do not want to lend. You need private investment. And you probably thought now that you know I have money, maybe I would be interested. I stood up and walked to my window, looking out at the city. The answer is no. I will not invest a single dollar in your company. Joanne, that is not why we came, Harold protested weakly. Yes, it is, I said, turning back to face them. And even if there was a fantastic return on investment guaranteed, I still would not do it. I choose my business partners carefully. I choose people with integrity, with character, with values that align with mine. You have shown me that you possess none of those qualities. Brandon stood up angrily. This is ridiculous. One mistake, and you are going to hold it against us forever. It was not one mistake, I said calmly. It was months of condescension, months of subtle insults, months of making it clear that you thought I was beneath you. The scene at the wedding was just the culmination. It was just the moment when you felt comfortable enough to say out loud what you had been thinking all along. I walked to my office door and opened it. Gentlemen, I think we are done here. Please leave. Harold stood up slowly. You are making a mistake, Joanne. You are letting pride get in the way of a good business opportunity. I smiled coldly. I have built an $80 million company based on my instincts about people and situations. My pride has served me very well. Now please go. They left. I closed the door behind them and leaned against it, my heart pounding. My assistant knocked softly. Are you all right, Miss Miller? I am fine, I said. Better than fine, actually. And I was. For the first time since that terrible wedding night, I felt at peace. I had stood up for myself. I had refused to let wealth change their perception of me retroactively. I had made it clear that respect cannot be bought or earned after the fact. It has to be given freely to everyone, regardless of their bank account. 6 months have passed since that wedding. My life has changed in ways I never expected. The publicity from the incident, while uncomfortable, brought new attention to my company. Business is better than ever. I have expanded into 2 new states and hired 15 new employees. Sophie and Brandon are still married, but it is complicated. Sophie moved out of Brandon's apartment and got her own place. They are in counseling trying to work through the damage that night caused. Brandon is trying. Sophie tells me. He has apologized many times. He is reading books about privilege and class. He is seeing a therapist. Whether it will be enough, only time will tell. Sophie started working for my company 3 months ago. She is learning the business from the ground up, starting in property management. She is good at it. She has my eye for potential and her father's attention to detail. We have lunch together twice a week, and our relationship has never been stronger. She tells me she understands now why I made the choices I did. She thanks me for teaching her values instead of just giving her things. Patricia and Harold reached out twice more both times, trying to mend fences. I have been polite but distant. I do not need their friendship or their approval. Kristen sent me a long email apologizing for her behavior. I responded briefly accepting her apology, but making no promises of future relationship. William and I have become genuine friends and occasional business partners. We collaborated on a commercial property development in Boston that was very successful. He is a good man who was raised by the same parents as Harold, but somehow learned different values. We have dinner once a month talking about business and life. He has never again mentioned his family's behavior, which I appreciate. The most surprising development has been the messages I receive almost daily from complete strangers. People who heard my story and reached out to share their own experiences of being judged, dismissed, or humiliated based on their appearance or perceived status. Single mothers who work multiple jobs. People who dress simply by choice. Immigrants who are looked down on. Their messages remind me that what happened to me happens to countless people every day, and most of them do not have a William to speak up for them or a successful company to reveal. Most of them just have to swallow the insult and move on. I have started a scholarship fund for single mothers pursuing business degrees. I named it after Paul, whose death forced me to become strong, but whose love gave me the foundation to do so. The Paul Miller Scholarship has already helped 12 women start their educational journeys. I still live in my modest house. I still drive my old car, though I did finally get it a tune-up. I still shop at department stores and cook my own meals. I do not need to prove my wealth to anyone. The people who matter know my worth, and it has nothing to do with my bank account. On a personal level, I have learned something important. For years, I thought humility meant hiding my success. I thought being modest meant being invisible. But that night at the wedding taught me there is a difference between humility and allowing yourself to be diminished. Real humility is being secure in who you are. It is not needing to flaunt or to hide. It is simply being authentic. I also learned about the true nature of respect. Brandon and his family taught me that some people only respect wealth, not humanity. They showed me that for them, value is measured in dollars and designer labels. And while that hurt, it also freed me. I do not need respect from people like that. I do not want it. Yesterday, Sophie called me. She wanted to tell me she had made a decision. She is filing for separation from Brandon. Not divorce yet, but separation. She needs time, she said, to figure out who she is outside of that relationship, to understand what she really wants in a partner. She sounded sad, but also relieved. "Mom," she said, "I think I married Brandon because he seemed successful and confident. I thought his family's wealth meant they were sophisticated, that they knew how the world worked. But you showed me that real sophistication is about character. Real confidence is about being kind, regardless of who is watching. I want to find someone who understands that. Someone who would have defended you that night instead of laughing. Someone who values people over possessions." I told her I was proud of her. I told her she has all the time in the world to figure out what she wants. And I reminded her that she never needs a partner to be complete. She already is. Looking back, I would not change what happened. Yes, it was painful. Yes, it was humiliating in the moment. But it revealed truths that needed revealing. It showed me who people really were. It freed me from the burden of trying to fit into a world that did not value what I value. And it gave my daughter a clear view of what matters in life. People sometimes ask me if I regret not telling Sophie about my success sooner. If I regret letting Brandon's family treat me that way for so long before revealing the truth. The answer is no. If I had told them from the beginning, they would have treated me well, but only because of my money. I would never have known their true nature. Sophie would never have seen the ugly reality beneath their polished surface. By staying silent, by letting them show their true colors, I protected my daughter from making a terrible mistake with her eyes closed. She went into that marriage knowing exactly who she married. And now she can make her choices based on reality, not illusion. So here I am, 6 months later, 56 years old, widowed, successful, stronger than I have ever been. I built an empire from nothing. I raised a wonderful daughter. I stood up to people who tried to make me feel small. And I did it all while staying true to myself. They called me an ugly rat because they thought I was beneath them. But I learned something that night, something I want to share with everyone who has ever been judged, dismissed, or looked down upon. True wealth is not what you own. It is who you are when no one is watching. It is how you treat people who can do nothing for you. It is the values you hold when they are tested. And by that measure, I am richer than Brandon and his family will ever understand. I look in the mirror now and I see what I did not see that night at the wedding. I see a woman who survived loss, who built something extraordinary, who raised a daughter with integrity, who stood up for herself when it mattered most. The grey in my hair is not age, it is wisdom. The lines on my face are not flaws, they are the map of a life fully lived. And that old car in my driveway, it runs just fine. It gets me where I need to go. And where I need to go is forward into a future where I am surrounded by people who value me for who I am, not what I have. A future where my daughter knows her worth. A future where I use my success to help others who are starting where I started, with nothing but determination and hope. That is real wealth. That is real success. And no amount of insults or laughter can take it away from me. Now I have a question for all of you watching. Have you ever been judged unfairly by people who did not know your true story? Have you ever had to stand up for yourself when everyone else was against you? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might help someone else who is going through the same thing. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel for more stories about real people facing real challenges. And share this video with someone who needs to hear that their worth is not determined by other people's opinions. Thank you for watching. And remember, the people who judge you based on appearances do not deserve to know your depths. Stay strong, stay true to yourself, and never let anyone make you feel less than you are. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.